Going back to your title again, a similar thing seems to have happened in the last 40, 50 years, where people, particularly when you're going to hospital, put down Church of England, Catholic, whatever. Yeah. And religion is much more difficult to define these days, and it's much more messy. I mean, is that parallel, or is that different?
No, I think that's all part of the same thing. The title comes from a quote by George Bernard Shaw in 1911. He said the ordinary Britisher imagines that God is an Englishman. And that was, post-Victorian Empire, the idea, as Lord Curzon said, that the duty of the Englishman was to bring civilization to parts of the world like India, which didn't have it. Laughably, obscenely arrogant now, as we see it from here, but very much part of the culture and part of the notion of God and nation intertwined, which had started with the Elizabethans and actually carried through all the way through to the new Elizabethans. Queen Elizabeth took coronation vows that reinforced the idea that she was chosen by God to lead this country in the true faith. Vows that her son can't take. Won't be able to, and we'll have to come up with a different way of doing it, which will be interesting to see. So God and Englishness have been intertwined for all of that time. Now, that old-fashioned establishment English God has died, or at least been diminished in power. I think the Church of England is a busted flush in many ways, apart from the good work that some people are doing at the local community level as an institution. Thank you very much, it's dead. It's about time you realised it and rebuilt it. That's just a little side issue. If you're listening from the Church of England, please do read the book for more. But that is a side issue, but it is also fundamental to the idea of Englishness, that we did have this really forceful view of God and England side by side and intertwined for 500 years, and that has gone. So, what comes in its place? Or is this idea actually that if you ask people, do you believe in a higher power, well, whatever you want to call it, he, she or they, routinely 2/3 of people will say yes. Now, if you take away all the people in England alone who believe so much that they are part of an organised religion, go to church, temple or mosque, take them away, you're left with 26 million people at least who believe but don't belong to anything, and frankly are very happy about it. And they have this improvised, DIY, personal, superstitious but actually quite sincere and convicted creative spirituality, which does have a few common elements, which include, as a hangover from the old days, this sense of fair play and justice, which feeds into inclusiveness, actually, much more than people realise. A sense that the earth is somewhere special to be protected and preserved, which is actually a new thing, comes out of the environmental movement. A kind of spirituality that's influenced by paganism and by Buddhism as well as by Christianity. So you have a new English God emerging among those 26 million people, by which I mean the God that is in the imagination of the English. And that means that the character of the English, the assumptions, the habits, the passions, the ways of community, the ways of living of the English change as well, because the old-fashioned traditions and expectations and habits of 50s Anglican England have gone, and so we are having to find new ways to be community or live in community or not, as it were. So when Dave Cameron comes along and talks about broken Britain, what he means is that the version of Britain that he was taught on the playing fields of Eton is definitely broken. And he can point to single mothers as an example of that if he wants, but really what he's not seeing is that fragmented Britain is remaking itself in a way that is out of control of the establishment, that is actually in the image of the people who are bawdy, iconoclastic, liable to give two fingers up to people who take airs and graces, fond of a good drink, fond of a carry-on film, fond of a bit of bling. That's who the English are.
Can you give me some examples that you've found doing this?
Of what?
Of modern English. If you're talking about an emerging English identity, which is mixed up and so on.
Yeah, I mean, there are some people who are consciously doing it. There's for example, if you want to look at music, a very good album called The Imagined Village, which was by people like Sheila Chandra, who's originally coming out of an Asian tradition, Paul Weller, Eliza Carthy, who's an English folk musician, and various others around Asian and African music, who have taken old English songs and put them in a new setting. And it is the sound of a New England. In food, my goodness, there are so many examples. I think of a place called Café Lahore in Bradford, where during Ramadan the place is crowded with people who go and enjoy a full Muslim. They can't eat during out of daylight, so they go for what is effectively a full English breakfast, only with halal meat instead of pork. And then the hours of daylight pass, and what do they go for back in the evening? What's the big seller at Café Lahore after dark? Jam and coconut sponge with custard, which they sell alongside chicken karahi. Extraordinary textures and clashes, but actually not clashes at all. It seems perfectly natural for people who go into Café Lahore, and that is, so there you have the sound and the taste of New Englishness.
So, I mean, throwing it all together, are you an optimist about this or not?
Yes, and I think I'm an optimist by choice, because I think it is time for people to choose to celebrate the possibilities of this New Englishness, as opposed to lamenting the lost, some of which I think I'm glad we've lost, or as opposed to organising against it, or being apathetic, letting it happen. I think that the right will steal Englishness, and will steal national identity, and will steal back the Cross of St George that the football fans took off them, if we let them. And the way to not let them is to learn to celebrate two things. One, celebrate the diversity in a very open way that involves music, food, dancing, parties, communities getting together on an equal basis, saying, look at this new thing we're creating. But on the other hand, to celebrate the daftness, actually, of English tradition, some of which, of course, is completely made up: cheese rolling, tar burning, Morris dancing, things that have been revived by people who want to get back in touch with some kind of Englishness. Sometimes revived actually means reinvented or actually invented, right? Because, they're daft and wonderful and what good fun, right? And a lot of people have been sniffy about that and said, oh, that's actually a bit embarrassing and a bit sort of, oh no, we put that away. No, what we need to do is celebrate those things as much as we celebrate, Chinese New Year dragon dancing or any other aspect of one of those cultures which are now contributing to ours. So the way to beat the BNP is to have a party.
Party with the BNP. Thank you, Cole.
Thank you.